Our next session is going to be creating engaging, accessible videos. I'm Brad Clark. I work for Academic Outreach and Innovation. Our presenters for this session are going to be Sabine Davis, Ryan Risemay, Erin Gallagher, and Christine Curtis.
All right, hello everyone. Well, I would like to start by saying that unlike Willie, I'm not a very technology savvy person, and I'm not going out there to try and find the best technology that I can use, but I'm willing to try things. And I would like to thank people at Global Campus to really encourage us with certain technology and guiding us in using them. And in the case of Panopto, I would like to thank specifically Ruth Gregory, who's been really helpful removing my fear and uneasiness about using that tool. To start with, I would like to explain the different courses I've been using Panopto in, and there are three courses that in which I have been using Panopto. The first one is an online class. It's an introduction to linguistics. It's in English. The second one is a French class. It's a capstone in English as well and online. And this semester, I've used also Panopto in a language class, a face-to-face class, a third semester French course. The advantages that I found to Panopto, I started using VoiceThread and then switched to Panopto when we were asked to, are several. And the first one, especially for my French class, was to be able to add some different sources for the content. In a language class, it's sometimes very difficult and challenging to find appropriate audio material for our students to engage with. And you have choices between publishers' created material that are sometimes very narrow and not very engaging for students, or you had things like YouTube video that you could access online, with the disadvantage of basically having students not understand anything because of the speed. On YouTube, you find regular French people speaking, and students are not prepared for that. So Panopto was a great tool for me because I was able to capture some of these audio that I wanted the student to work with, and using that great thing that is the slow down button with Panopto. So I want to show you this on one of the video, and you'll see the difference. And the advantage was that you get the slowdown option without the whoa, whoa, whoa type of thing with the voice. The speech is still very clear. So here we have the beginning of the video, and we have full speed. And then if you go down to... Oh. How do I get back to that screen? Yeah. So if you do slow down, it slows down quite a bit, and students are still able to understand something that was completely inaccessible to them. So I use that a whole lot in my courses. Okay, and then moving on to another use of Panopto is diversifying the format or content. Oh yeah, I'm not in the presentation mode anymore, thank you. And that was specifically a challenge with my online courses, because I wanted to avoid the having the students engage strictly with reading and then reacting to the reading or discussing the reading. And so I was able to include a lot of mini lectures or lectures that I recorded, kind of like Willie was saying, basically in my office, based on a PowerPoint presentation, and allowing the students to have different formats. So it was audio, video, rather than just reading. So I use that quite a bit. Another use of Panopto that I apply a lot also in my online courses is having students actually contribute to the content themselves. This was the case, for example, in my linguistics class when we explored the diversity of writing systems in the world. And of course, I provided a lecture and a reading regarding some basic concepts about writing systems. But then I wanted to expose the students to the variety of writing systems in the world, and I didn't want to present them with 5, 10 different writing systems. That would be very repetitive. And so I had students research one specific writing system, and in groups of 10, each would have a different writing system, and create a Panopto presentation themselves that they could share with other students. So students were required to watch 4 of the presentation in their group, and therefore get the material, the content from 4 different students. And the content was usually pretty good quality. So I wanted to see if I could show you one example of such a presentation.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Akane Otsuka. Today I will talk about Tamil script.
So we had a lot of different material included that way in the course content that didn't come from me, and that was nice for the students to be able to see other students' work as well. I also used this semester for the first time Panopto to assess the oral proficiency of the students, and that's always an issue for us language teachers. How am I going to assess in a very practical manner the oral proficiency of my students? So I decided to give Panopto a try, and basically we did it during test time. So students would bring their laptop to class and respond to 3-4 prompts that I would give them in writing, and they would record themselves using Panopto in the classroom. So that was a little bit of the zoo, of a zoo in the sense that we were in a small classroom, a regular classroom with 25 students, recording themselves speaking French. And I told them, you have to speak loud enough to make sure I understand everything and can hear you. And I think students responded pretty well to that. I had different or slightly different prompts for everybody. So a student recording himself or herself couldn't necessarily hear what the student next door answered. So they were really on their own in terms of coming up with the material and responding to those prompts. I will have you listen to one of the recordings. So you see it's really good quality, and the nice thing, it allows me to, outside of class time, really take my time assessing the proficiency of the students.
Je suis étudiant à WSU depuis un semestre. Je me spécialise en neurosciences.
Anyway, so students answered 3 prompts that way, and that was really a nice way for me to be able to assess them. We had one issue, however, with this, is that students were relying on the Wi-Fi in the classroom, and Wi-Fi in Avery is not great, I guess, but next time we're going to be using that in our language lab, and the students will be on actually wired-in computers, so we won't have an issue with wireless. The last use I made of Panopto, kind of incidental and based on the need of the day, I made a promotional video. Our French section is proposing a new minor program for students in fashion and designing, which is French for fashion and designing, and I wanted to see if this program would be of interest to students in that department. And so I made this video explaining the advantage of such a minor, all the details of the program, and that video was shown to an incoming freshman class in AMDT, and that was about 120 students. So without me going there, that took 5 minutes to watch that video. It was also shared with them through a link, and they were able to fill out a survey to let us know, yes, that is a good program. So you can really use Panopto in a lot of different ways. So that's my presentation, my humble presentation of how I've been using Panopto. Thank you.
Do you want people to ask you questions?
Yeah, sure, if anybody has any questions.
At Vancouver campus, I wanted to know, since you have used VoiceThread and Panopto both, which one did you like better? I know you have switched to Panopto, but are they both same, or did you find any differences?
I think Panopto is a lot easier to use. It's a lot more straightforward, and you have more options. You can load up videos, you can capture things from the internet, and I don't think that was as easy to do with VoiceThread. And you have this editing option with Panopto that I'm using a little bit more now, that allows you to add to a pre-existing video or cut the ends, or you have a lot more flexibility. The only issue we had was people who used Macs as opposed to PC. I use a PC, and so I was really able to help students who were having technology problem with Panopto. But people who use Mac, I relied on Ruth's instructions, step-by-step instructions for people who use Mac, and I think it worked out okay.
And just another question, like if you have a YouTube video, you might have answered that. If you have a YouTube video, can you download into Panopto and edit that? Like let's say it was a 30 minutes video and you just want to show a 2-minute clip out of that. You can do that?
Absolutely, yep. Yep. So it's really flexible, really easy to use actually, yeah.
So one of the things I know you can do with VoiceThread is have students respond to other students and record that so that you kind of get a little bit of dialogue going between the students. Can you do that with Panopto, or were you doing that with your previously?
I'm not aware whether you can do that or not, and I haven't used that, but usually students engage in writing through discussion forum on the video that they share. That's how I've been doing it. So there is some communication there.
Okay, so I think as with all these things, it's a matter of finding the right tool for what you're trying to accomplish.
Oh yeah, yeah,
great.
definitely.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's through the university, and you have great people helping you if you have any problems. So I would definitely recommend it for language courses. All right, thank you very much.
Okay, hi everyone. Ryan Risemay. I've been here at WSU for a couple of years now. I'm in the Murrow College of Communication, and I teach digital media strategies, usually with social media or web engagement, and testing for usability, user experience. I came on board and immediately was introduced to some online teaching instruction through our master's program. And so I'm going to show you some of the engagement that we've had with students through VoiceThread. I have not tried Panopto yet because of just the course schedules, already having a lot of this set up before I've stuck with VoiceThread for a little while yet. So let me show you a few of the things that I've learned. You know, many tools obviously that we can try, but I've realized as I go about my instruction, the things that I'm looking for mostly are going to be quality tools that can help me have a clean presentation, not going to have any mishaps or confusion. I want it to be very clear and crisp in its presentation for video quality purposes. And then also I need it to be pretty efficient to use. I don't want to spend a lot of time reworking anything. I'd rather just get right in and have at my disposal what I'm looking for. I need it to be a little flexible because I will bring in a few different kinds of materials. So whether it's segmented videos that I find online, or if it's segments that I record myself, I want to be able to easily transition from one thing to the next and line them up and retranspose where I need things to be as I'm a little more flexible with my presentation going forward. And then I'm looking for some editing capabilities as well. I don't see in VoiceThread as much editing capabilities that appear to be in Panopto, but I will show you a few things that I've discovered kind of on the back end with VoiceThread. Students, I think, are looking for that same kind of quality on their end as well. They want it to be very clear and understandable. They want it to be a pretty smooth experience. I've experienced a few times when students have pinged me with questions to say, That was not zoomed in as closely as I'd like it to be to see the detail you're talking about, and so that's been a few lessons learned. Just immediately I was starting to get some of that feedback. And in some cases, I think tying the students into to where they get the kind of troubleshooting support that they need on their end is also helpful. It'll free you up from some of the worries that you might have too. They also want it to be very usable on their end too, so they can pause, they can rewind and see exactly what's being talked about, or hear it over and over again. And then I've found that they do like to respond and they do like to engage, and so there is the feature, as you can see here, of how to comment on a video, that they will be able to feature themselves by face and by voice when they click the comment button at the bottom, that little plus sign, and that indicates a variety of ways that they can comment. I'm going to show you a few ways that those responses show up also for class engagement. So I've learned that I should ask for that kind of participation out of the students. I should invite them to participate with VoiceThread a little bit more. And some may be a little hesitant because it's new, or it's not a classroom per se, but it's still a virtual classroom that I try to facilitate a little bit more. It makes your life a little bit better when you can get feedback that way too. You can kind of sense who's more engaged as a student than others. So to open up that dialogue, one of the things that I've done is I just start off immediately with an introductory video that I record myself, and I try to make it look pretty low key. I decided that just by having that first and foremost in the course is one thing, but I'm going to add a little bit more detail to invite that participation. So you can see on the left side there next to my image is my own comment, a written comment to say, click the comment button and add your own video introduction. Or actually it says audio introduction, and this time I was thinking they would probably just maybe not have access to a webcam, so to reduce the requirement on their technology, just speak into a mic and give your audio introduction. So that's what they did. You can see on the right side, Brian Segala gave his piece next. He was the first to contribute, and in order, each of those icons represents one of the speakers. And then at the bottom, you can see a blow up of the timeline of comments, all in order, and how long each segment is, as well as the total amount of comments. So that's kind of nice too, because you can jump from one comment to the next real easily, and that's not just you as the instructor, but anyone in the class. So it's good to get a sequential dialogue started that way. There's another way to get a dialogue going, and that's with threaded comments, which I think was the comment earlier, or question earlier. So VoiceThread does enable this, but you have to enable that yourself as an instructor. By default, at least for me, threaded comments doesn't happen. It's a sequential comment order. So the view looks a little different. If you can see on Maria's queue now, this is after I've enabled threaded comments. The view shows up a little differently when you click the plus comment icon. It gives you the reply in thread to notation. So you can then respond as you click on a person's comment, and then as indicated in the middle image, your own comment would look like it's nested underneath that person's comment. It's a little different that way, but you have to enable it yourself, and this is how you do it. When you're done building your deck, or anytime I suppose, on the right side of your editing mode of viewing your VoiceThread file, you'll see a little wheel, a settings wheel, and you click the settings, and you get to see the thread settings here in playback options. Right there, the first highlight I've indicated is the checkbox to enable threaded comments. So again, by default, that's not checked. I have to go in and do that. The other nice things to look at here are the other playback options, such as allowing others to export by default. These, by the way, these check marks are what are by default. And so if you prefer to keep your presentations or your videos private and make sure that no one can sort of redistribute your material, you'd want to watch out for that export feature. There's also that other one that I've highlighted of enabling comment moderation. So if you feel like you want to facilitate a little bit more, have a different kind of engagement, then that's also available for you there too. You can also see another feature where you allow commenters to add their own slides into that VoiceThread and build that a little bit yourself. Whether that's for students to do or if that's for TAs, I guess you could see a variety of engagement that you want to come up with yourself. Honestly, on the right side, allowed comment methods. I've never seen the telephone method used, and I don't know. By default, it's checked. I don't even know why we'd need that with usually some online engagement that we have. There's a few more features that I wanted to call out too, and that's you can reorder your slides. So as you get into the editing mode, you see. And my method typically is I create a PowerPoint deck and I save it as a PDF as a backup, but I bring right into to VoiceThread those PowerPoint slides, and so they show up as slide views here. But any piece of content that you bring in is viewed in this order as well. So those are thumbnail views of every piece of content in order. And when you click the reorder button, you can get into a reordering mode. You can click and drag onto that button as well, and so such as the delete button and take it out of your deck. I've done this before where I record a whole session, and then later on the next semester when I come around, I realize I need to update that already. And so rather than re-recording the whole thing, I get into the edit mode. I save my new version of that PowerPoint slide and I just drop it in and delete the old. And it also works well with your comments. So your own voiceover comments, it still keeps when you replace slides that way. So it's kind of nice. You can also share editing rights too, which I found interesting. I've never done that myself. I don't need to. But if I was collaborating with another instructor, say a coordinated class or maybe a TA or something, a graduate assistant, I could enable them to have editing rights on the same file. So before we're even done recording it and preparing it, we could have a collaborative effort. That's kind of neat. Okay, so what more could we do as instructors? Upload videos, of course, your own videos, not just slides. So the example of my intro video is one. I recorded that on my phone, saved it as an MP4, brought it in off my computer. But you could also go through webcam video right from your desk, which is usually what I do when I'm recording lectures. And the green indicates here the option to include other video sources that you find on the internet as well. You just grab either a shortened link like off YouTube or the long link. You can do that too. You can even use the YouTube link that has a starting point at a certain timestamp. When you get into the share feature of YouTube, you can choose that option, so you can start at, say, seconds 25 in and use that link, which is kind of nice because then in your order of slides and presentation, you just go from one to the next, and it cues it right up to where you need it to be in perhaps a large, long YouTube video. And similar to what we just saw with Sabine, students can create their own responses as well, their own presentations. And this can be done with VoiceThread. So as they get the hang of it and seeing what we do, they can also provide their own presentations. Here's an example of one of our master's students, Chloe, and the presentation she put together. She started it off with her own audio introduction on the first slide, and then she recorded an audio bed for each of the slides as you go through the experience. And this is just simply one view of all those slides together. So I think that's nice too, to offer up that opportunity. They could do video presentations or, as we saw before, audio recordings. That's what I have to share. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I'm just curious with the student response here in Vancouver. I'm just curious how the students respond to it, and whether you ever get any technical issues with the students' contributions.
So the question, I think, is if the students have problems, and are we getting any indication that they have trouble with the tool, with the experience? Yeah, so I did experience a little bit at first. Granted, this was a couple years ago when I was new to the tool as well. So I didn't have answers for them at that time, and I passed them on to the help desk in Global Campus to help with that. Yeah, I was learning the tool as well. I haven't heard of any trouble since then. So I'm not sure if anyone from Global Campus has experienced anything lately to respond better to that, but yeah, I haven't lately. Thanks.
Ryan, this is Phyllis in Spokane College of Nursing. Very interesting with VoiceThread, but I'm wondering how that works with Blackboard. It seems like Panopto is the default. Did you have to bring VoiceThread in and place it into your Blackboard course somehow?
Okay, yeah, thanks for that question. You're right, Panopto is the natural choice right out of Blackboard. I have simply, in my development of my course in Blackboard, featured the links off to the videos in VoiceThread, and I enable that link as opening up in a new window. So as you probably know with Blackboard, you can add a piece of content that is an external URL link. Just make sure that it's set to open up in another window. That's my choice. You don't have to, but that's my choice so that the student doesn't leave their Blackboard experience too. Yep. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you.
So my name's Ruth Gregory. I'm with Academic Outreach and Innovation, and so I help to administer VoiceThread and Panopto and the other tools that we've been talking about. And so going back to the question before this about technical issues, the one thing to keep in mind is if you do want to use VoiceThread and it is a course that you might be using media with another instructor or passing it off to someone else, that you do have to use the edit function that Ryan pointed out to share it with them, because we do not have administrative access on the other side. So that is one thing to keep in mind if you wanted to develop material in VoiceThread versus Panopto, where on the Panopto side, we do have administrative access on the backside. So that is a technical thing to keep in mind. Okay. Our last presenters for this session are Ellen Gallagher. It's already been such a long morning. Erin Gallagher and Christine Curtis from the Murrow College.
Thanks, Ruth. Hi, everybody. I'm Erin Gallagher, and as Ruth said, I'm from the Murrow College of Communication. I'm the course director for our Communication 102 class, which is public speaking in the digital age. And Christy here is my course assistant. So we figured we'd both talk to you because we each have a couple of different functions, I guess, that we use Panopto for and manage different aspects of it for our class and the way that we use it. For us, for Com 102, with public speaking, it's a class that's obviously been around for a very long time, and we have tried to bring it into a modern age a little bit more just by focusing on our overall goal of the class being to teach students how to effectively communicate in a variety of different professional contexts, which nowadays doesn't mean just being able to stand in front of a live audience and deliver a presentation, but also to use computer-mediated technology to effectively deliver a message. Obviously, companies now are using Skype and similar kinds of programs to conduct job interviews. Business is often conducted by web conferencing and video conferencing and things like that. So we feel like it's a very important skill for the students to have kind of as a fundamental basic communication skill, to be able to not just deliver a presentation, adapt to an audience and craft the message for a live public speaking setting, but to think about how we communicate with public audiences through computer mediated technology as well. So for our class, and we have around 800 students a semester usually, so we have them doing a total of 6 presentations throughout the semester. 3 of those are live in class, and then 3 of those are conducted via Panopto. So they are responsible for learning how to use the system, recording their own presentations, and then it gives a very unique chance for them to practice those skills that they're going to need in the workplace. And we really try to emphasize it as like this is practice for not only other classes that might be using similar kinds of technology for interacting with professors and other students, but also for future workplace kinds of interactions. I'm going to let Christy tell you about an example. A student just came and talked to her recently.
Yeah, so we always tell our students, as much as you hate working with this software right now, it's relevant. You're going to need it. You're going to do a Skype interview, and seeing how you respond and how you look on camera, how you sound, that goes into what they're judging you on in your professional capacity. So looking and sounding professional in person and on camera is really important. So they roll their eyes and they groan and they grumble, and it's the second assignment we're doing, and a student comes up to me after class and says, Christy, I have a job interview with Alaska Airlines. And I say, wow, that's fantastic. You know, it's a 100 level course. We don't get to hear a lot of these, but she said, yeah, it's for an entry-level position at Alaska Airlines, but I'm really scared. And I said, why are you scared? And she said, they have you download an app on your phone that will record you giving your interview when you're ready. And they email you sample questions so you can practice for the interview, but you have to download the software and practice with it to get comfortable. And then on a Monday in the morning, they email you the real interview questions, and you have to record yourself on this app on your phone, and then it goes to Alaska Airlines. That's how they assess it. So you have X number of hours to do it. I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And she was like, I'm really scared. And it was like, well, have you done your Panopto assignments? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, use Panopto as a practice tool. You had to download that software to figure out how to get it to work, to get a grade. You have to figure out how you look and sound on camera. You have this tool at your disposal. Like, that's your practice venue. She was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much more sense. And it gave her a lot more comfort knowing she had some experience there. At first, it was really abstract, but I'm like, this really works, I promise. And I did not make this example up. So I tell all of my classes, I'm like, hey, if you want to interview for Alaska Airlines and some other bigger companies, this is a really common avenue for you to be interviewed through. So getting comfortable in that space is really, really important.
Yeah, and I think it's just, it's a great tool that we have access to as faculty members here at WSU, and a way for us to bring relevant skills to them, not only in the workplace or in the classroom, but thinking ahead to the workplace. One thing that we have found after a year, I guess now, of using Panopto, we started using Panopto fall of last year, so fall and spring, and then this semester, is that the students definitely have a learning curve with it, especially when our audience is primarily freshmen and sophomores at the 100 level. So they definitely need a lot of instruction on how to use Panopto, and you can't make any assumptions that they're going to be able to figure it out on their own. And so what we did at the start of the semester was sit down with all of our group of 8 TAs and basically put together a very thorough Panopto best practices handout for them, which we really try to emphasize at the beginning of the semester, just because it's not just about actually like putting together the message and adapting to the audience, which for us are kind of like traditional public speaking skills, but also thinking about what kind of a setup do you need to be in to record a good video, like what kind of a background do you need, what kind of lighting and color scheme, what kind of microphone might you need, or what does your computer have as far as capabilities. They have to figure out how to download. It's actually very easy to download, Panopto is, but they have to be able to do it and then log in and all of that. So we've really taken an effort this semester over previous semesters to walk them through very step by step and take the time at the beginning of the semester to kind of orient them to being able to use Panopto successfully. And then their first assignment that they do is just a simple test post, where basically the only requirements are for them to download Panopto and then essentially just test their audio, their video. We have them make a PowerPoint slide just to show that they can link up the PowerPoint to it. And then once they get comfortable with that, we take it up a notch. We have them do a presentation which focuses just on delivery skills. So we talk about elements of how to make eye contact with your webcam and how to speak clearly and articulate so that the person on the other end of your recording is going to be able to understand you well. And then our third recorded presentation is finally a research-based, informative kind of presentation, which is more like a traditional speech or presentation that you would deliver with information and sources and things like that. But we've definitely found that it is worthwhile to take the time to build that process for them, because one, they're still learning like research skills, how to make an outline, how to do a presentation, but then pairing that with learning how to use the technology We've found a lot more success and a lot higher quality of presentations and videos if we really take the time with them at the beginning of the semester and make zero assumptions, even though I think, especially with the younger students, it's easy to assume they're going to be comfortable with technology because they've grown up with it, they use their phones, they're on YouTube all the time, which is true, but they're mostly consumers. Most of them are consumers of that information rather than creators of that information. So they're usually in the spot of being a creator of video content for the first time, and that's something that they have to really learn and practice. But once they do, like Christy said, start to see the value in that, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to let Christy talk to you a little bit about just some of the issues, I guess, with managing a large group of students as far as video content, keeping it organized, and so forth.
Yeah, so before we used Panopto, we used a program that was really similar called Tegrity. So this is actually the 4th year that we've been working with a similar system setup. And one of the challenges we have with such a large class, we go anywhere from 800 up to 1,200 is our max capacity. So in a given semester, we have a lot of videos coming in, and we have a lot of TAs on our team to help us manage that and work with the students. So in terms of capacity and working with Panopto, we've run into a couple of hiccups where the system just isn't designed for 800 students to be logged on and recording all at the same time. We give them 2 weeks to do their assignments, but as we know, especially with our 18-year-olds, their favorite bad study habit is procrastination, and so they all wait till the last minute. So this year we didn't see it as much. I think we're hopefully moving upward with that trend of getting them to do it early, but we have had some issues with the system crashing, and what we try to tell the students is, look, if you're doing a big business presentation and you wait till the last minute and the technology doesn't work, what do you tell your boss? You don't have a lot of flexibility there. So do it early. If there's a problem, we can fix it ahead of time. But if you wait till the last minute, it's problematic. But that is one of the reoccurring issues that we have on a consistent basis, is getting the technology to be able to support upwards of 1,000 videos all at once coming in around the same time. Academic Media Services has been a fantastic help resource for us. So when we first started Panopto, when we did the switch from Panopto to Tegrity, they had bought a software package to have us call Panopto directly, and we found that that was absolutely useless. It was terrible. So AMS stepped up and was able to manage all of the student problems and concerns, so the students can go right into Academic Media Services. The convenience of calling Panopto 24 hours a day was very exciting to students, but they weren't able to provide the type of support that we need. They didn't know our class specifically, so the types of fixes and solutions they had just threw the students for a loop. So even though Academic Media Services is not available 24/7 as the students would like, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. in the morning seems to be a prime time to do recordings. AMS has been phenomenal in providing great tech support and helping us work through all of the glitches. And we work closely with both Ruth and Heather to get the videos organized. They've come up with a folder system so that we can get the videos into the separate folders for each individual section and then in assignment folders, so the TAs and instructors aren't searching through all of the videos to try to find their students. That's been challenging. Another one of the things that we discovered with Panopto pretty quickly, with Tegrity, it would submit the video with their name attached based on their network ID, but Panopto doesn't do that. It sends a default with the date and time that the video was uploaded, and so in our Panopto best practices, we tell students, you need to label your video correctly so that we can find it. That's one of the things we're always harping on is, put your name in there, and it's on all of our documents that we give them. Label your video correctly, but that is one of the downsides that we've come across. We tell the students we won't grade your video if you don't have it labeled correctly. And it works as a scare tactic most of the time, but there's always like the 5%. And if you search in the folder with their name, it'll pull it up. But otherwise, you just have to watch the videos. And then if you don't know all of your students' names just yet and they don't put it on the title slide, you're comparing photo with the Zeusis roster, my WSU roster, which is a little chaotic. But I think we're much better now with the folder system set up, so it makes managing 1,000 videos. They each go into their folder. Each TA has about 25 students. So that's really, really helpful for us. The cool feature that Panopto has that Tegrity didn't, that I was excited about, Erin didn't work with Tegrity, but with Panopto, the students can delete their own recordings, which is fantastic. In Tegrity, they couldn't. So they uploaded 5 videos, and then they want one final. They have to email you and say, this is the one I want you to grade. And you're like, but with Panopto, they can delete. So they can do it as many times as they want, and they can delete their own recording, which is fantastic. We're super excited about that feature. And it works pretty well. So all in all, I think we're pretty satisfied with Panopto now that we've made it through the first hurdle last semester with the first time using it and trying to figure out the best way to make it functional and come up with a folder system. It's become really manageable for us. And as we continue to work with students to identify where they're consistently needing more help, we can work our curriculum and our help resources around that to provide the support they need. But all in all, I think we've been really satisfied with what we have. I say that partially because I don't want to switch to another technology program and have to learn it all over again. But it's true. It actually works pretty well for our purposes.
Yeah, and just one last thing to add is that I think following up with what Christy said as far as getting the students to label their videos appropriately and put them into the correct Dropbox and things like that, it actually adds a nice feature of responsibility and accountability that the students have to learn, which is helpful for any classes or future jobs that they might have. And, you know, as I'm sure a lot of you have experienced, they're young and they often just expect things to be done for them, or, you know, to kind of have their hands held, and they do have to have a certain, you know, amount of responsibility to make sure that their video is labeled appropriately so that their instructor can find it and grade it, and that it's in the, you know, correct place, which those are skills that they need to have and be able to develop. So if they do have that Alaska Airlines interview or another interview, they're able to, you know, follow through with that and get that done successfully. So I think it's just kind of a nice added on feature from a general, you know, learning perspective for our students. And just logistically too, if you teach classes where you have students doing very many presentations, as you know, it's hard to find class time sometimes just to be able to have all the students give presentations. So for us, they're able to actually give more presentations in a semester than they would be if we were having them do all of those in class, because they recorded on their own time. So you don't have to schedule, you know, 6 presentations in a 50-minute class period or whatnot. And then it also, for the grading, allows the instructors more flexibility for, you know, being able to obviously watch the videos on their own time and provide feedback that's often a lot better than for in-class presentation where you're trying to just like take notes, you know, quickly and be able to respond right then, but to be able to provide really good feedback for the students, and for the students to have the capability to actually watch their own presentations back so they can see what they look and sound like from an audience's perspective is a really helpful tool for, you know, anybody who wants to improve their speaking and their presentation skills. So.
Okay, one other thing I think is valuable to mention. So from the student side of learning Panopto, we have not spent a ton of time with our TAs to make them experts in using Panopto themselves, because that learning curve is really high, and we want to direct the students to the experts who already know how to do it. So we are somewhat capable of doing Panopto recordings ourselves. I would think all of the TAs would be able to do it pretty easily, but we are not a central location for students to come get help. We utilize Academic Media Services and Trish and her team who know Panopto in and out, and it's a much better source of help for the students. So if the students come to us and say, I'm having this problem, we say, go to Academic Media Services. I'm not going to try to figure it out. I want you to go talk to somebody, to the expert in your field, get them to help you out. We're always polite and kind about it, but we say, look, we're here to help you with some of the content, and I can help you put together your PowerPoint, and if it's just an easy fix, that's fine. But if you're having a serious technical problem, you want to go talk to the tech experts. So we haven't spent a ton of time becoming experts in help for Panopto because we just don't have the time. Our TAs have 100 students and an instructor has 250 students. So we don't have the ability to be the tech help people there, but that's where AMS is fantastic and super, super helpful for us. Yes, we love them. Okay, I'm done.
Does anybody have any questions?
I have a couple of comments. I just do want to clarify that AMS and AOI are one and the same organization. Academic Media Services and Academic Outreach and Innovation is actually the umbrella name. So that. And then the other thing is, I think this is a place, back to a question about VoiceThread versus Panopto, and then, you know, Willie talked about a number of kinds of different technologies. Making a decision as to which one might be best to use is something that we at AOI, as well as the tech support on the various campuses, can really help with. We can talk. We oftentimes know some of the sort of behind the scenes issues that have come up, like Ruth talked about with VoiceThread. Well, then if another instructor needs to have access to that, that might be an issue. We know what some of the behind the scenes issues are with Panopto if you're cloning your course from semester to semester. So we can really help sit down, talk through what are your goals, what are you trying to accomplish with the technology, and help you make the best decision. So that's a role I think all of us on the various campuses in terms of tech support would like to play. And I think the other thing I wanted to say is, and Erin talked about this some, but having an assignment built in as they do, you have to download Panopto. We've always had assignments in the online courses. You have to go try the discussion board and just post, where they have to use the technology and get a little bit comfortable with it before they're actually being judged on or graded on the content, is really helpful. So we can't ever assume that they know how to use these technologies. Other questions?
I just want, this may be a question for you or for others in the room. Is the issue with Panopto crashing a campus capacity issue?
My understanding is it's a Panopto network issue, that Panopto is, if we have 200 kids recording, we're fine. When we start getting up to over 3/4 of the class is up there, so 600 students on at the same time, that's when it tends to go down. And we had that problem with Tegrity too. So it seems to be a network issue, not a WSU thing. Like Panopto itself can't handle that capacity, which is why we've tried different strategies to try to minimize the traffic. We tell them, do it early, you have 2 weeks to do it. And with our class, I think the crashing issue is fairly unique because we have so many students. With other classes in our department that I know that have used Panopto, they have not had any concern with it crashing with 25 to 50 students. It's just that really high threshold.
Given that Panopto is the default, I'm wondering if there are any capabilities that VoiceThread has that Panopto does not, that would make it the better technology. And I don't know who the best person is. Ruth?
Okay, so the differences between the two technologies are that VoiceThread allows for interaction, which is something that Panopto does not do as easily. VoiceThread allows for easier collaboration, so if you want students to create presentations in a group, VoiceThread does not have the ability to do screen capture, which Panopto does. Panopto, I'm trying to remember all of them. Panopto has the ability to slow down, like Sabine was showing, which is great if you have foreign language learners or English as a second language. Panopto does that. VoiceThread does not. Can you think of anything else? Peanut Gallery? Yeah. So VoiceThread has the ability to draw on the screen as you, the presenter, are doing it, or the students can do it later on. The one thing about the draw feature that I'm not a fan of, though, in VoiceThread is that you draw and then it will fade away. It doesn't hold. So you can't draw out, like, if you're doing mathematical equations, you couldn't, like, do the whole thing because it will, the things before it will start fading. And I don't know how to turn that off. If anyone does, I would love to hear that. So those are, I think, the differences between the two. Again, from an administrative side, if you as an instructor are creating videos that you will then, you know that someone else is teaching your class next semester and they're going to want to use those videos, or this is the one we've been having problems with lately, you're leaving the university and the next instructor might want those, you have the right to pass it off. I don't have the right as an administrator to go in and give people access to your VoiceThread presentations. So Panopto I can help out with, but VoiceThread I cannot. It's really, you're really more in the driver's seat. Okay.
This is Phyllis in Spokane. Do you ever see people using both? And if so, how do they differentiate those?
We generally recommend, if you're using something like VoiceThread or Panopto, and there's a couple other tools that are sort of like in that category, that you choose one for your class and go with it. The more technology, especially if they're very similar, that you integrate into one course, the more likelihood you're going to have students who are confused about where to find things, why does this look different. VoiceThread and Panopto don't look really different, but they function differently, and that can sometimes trip up students, especially if you're teaching at a distance and they're already kind of having a learning curve, feeling kind of isolated with the technology.
I just think it would be an interesting alternative to have VoiceThread for a different way to approach discussion boards. Instead of being static and text, being interactive in that way, but also having the Panopto ability to record lectures and possibly ask them to do that as an assignment. I see them as kind of two separate things.
So you can actually record lectures in VoiceThread, and we do have instructors who do that. I know that Rebecca Cooney from COM is really a fan of doing that. So it's not that you have to use the interactive feature in VoiceThread. It's just an option and one of the things that makes it different from Panopto. And there are other discussion board options like Piazza, which has been briefly mentioned by someone else who's presented this morning, which can definitely help with especially with mathematics sort of problems. And it is integrated with Blackboard and reports to the gradebook and stuff. We were talking about so many things today. Are we getting to that later? Oh. There might be more about Piazza later. If not, feel free to talk to me later. Any other questions?
I do think also, Phyllis, in response to your question, that what might be confusing is what we're asking students to do. So if we can limit that number of tools, but you as an instructor might use multiple tools. So if you want to use Panopto, create a series of lectures, but then you want your students to use VoiceThread because you want them to interact through a discussion board. That's another way to look at it. But I used, when I taught public speaking online, in order to avoid that confusion, I wanted the students to be able to watch each other's presentations and comment on them. So I used VoiceThread as the tool that students used, and that's what they recorded their presentations in. They didn't use, it was Tegrity at the time, but they just used VoiceThread.
Yeah, our program has, 4 or 5 different campuses, so we're spread all over the state. It's really challenging sometimes to help students engage across those many miles. And I'm intrigued by VoiceThread's possibility for doing that.
Yeah, I think that might be a good one.
Thank you.
Yeah, and on all of these, whatever campus you're on, there'll be open lab this afternoon at wherever your technology folks are located, so you can stop in and ask questions if you want, but you can always follow up with us as well and learn more about the tools.
Is that it?
Okay, so I think our next session officially begins at 11:15, so we have a short little break here for those who've been attending since early this morning. Be sure and eat up all the food on your campus. And we'll see you back at 11:15.
I also used this semester for the first time Panopto to assess the oral proficiency of the students. And that's always an issue for us language teachers. How am I going to assess in a very practical manner the oral proficiency of my students? So I decided to give Panopto a try, and basically we did it during test time. So students would bring their laptop to class and respond to 3-4 prompts that I would give them in writing, and they would record themselves using Panopto in the classroom. So that was a little bit of a zoo in the sense that we were in a small classroom, a regular classroom with 25 students, recording themselves speaking French. And I told them, you have to speak loud enough to make sure I understand everything and can hear you. And I think students responded pretty well to that. I had different or slightly different prompts for everybody. So a student recording himself or herself couldn't necessarily hear what the student next door answered. So they were really on their own in terms of coming up with the material and responding to those prompts. I will have you listen to one of the recordings. So you see it's really good quality, and the nice thing, it allows me to, outside of class time, really take my time assessing the proficiency of the students.
Je suis étudiant à WSU depuis un semestre. Je me spécialise en neurosciences.
anyway, so students answered 3 prompts that way, and
our next session is going to be creating engaging, accessible videos. I'm Brad Clark. I work for Academic Outreach and Innovation. Our presenters for this session are going to be Sabine Davis, Risemay, Erin Gallagher, and Christine Curtis.
All right, hello everyone. Well, I would like to start by saying that unlike Willie, I'm not a very technology savvy person, and I'm not going out there to try and find the best technology that I can use, but I'm willing to try things. And I would like to thank people at Global Campus to really encourage us with certain technology and guiding us in using them. And in the case of Panopto, I would like to thank specifically Ruth Gregory, who's been really helpful removing my fear and uneasiness about using that tool. To start with, I would like to explain the different courses I've been using Panopto in, and there are 3 courses that in which I have been using Panopto. The first one is an online class. It's an introduction to linguistics. It's in English. The second one is a French class that I apply a lot also in my online courses, is having students actually contribute to the content themselves. This was the case, for example, in my linguistics class when we explore the diversity of writing systems in the world. And of course, I provided a lecture and a reading regarding some basic concepts about writing systems. But then I wanted to expose the students to the variety of writing systems in the world, and I didn't want to present them with 5, 10 different writing systems. That would be very repetitive. And so I had students research one specific writing system, and in groups of 10, each would have a different writing system, and create a Panopto presentation themselves that they could share with other students. So students were required to watch 4 of the presentation in their group, and therefore get the material, the content from 4 different students. And the content was usually pretty good quality. So I wanted to see if I could show you one example of such a presentation.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Akane Otsuka. Today, I will talk about Tamil script.
So we had a lot of different material included that way in the course content that didn't come from me, and that was nice for the students to be able to see other students' work as well. The Capstone in English as well and online. And this semester, I've used also Panopto in a language class, a face-to-face class, a 3rd semester French course. The advantages that I found to Panopto, I started using VoiceThread and then switched to Panopto when we were asked to, are several. And the first one, especially for my French class, was to be able to add some different sources for the content. In a language class, it's sometimes very difficult and challenging to find appropriate audio material for our students to engage with. And you have choices between publishers' created material that are sometimes very narrow and not very engaging for students. Or you had things like YouTube video that you could access online, with the disadvantage of basically having students not understand anything because of the speed. On YouTube, you find regular French people speaking, and students are not prepared for that. So Panopto was a great tool for me because I was able to capture some of these audio that I wanted the student to work with, and using that great thing that is the slow down button with Panopto. So I want to show you this on one of the video, and you'll see the difference. And the advantage was that you get the slow down option without the whoa, whoa, whoa type of thing with the voice. The speech is still very clear. So here we have the beginning of the video, and we have full speed. And then if you go down to, do I get back to that screen? Yeah. So if you do slow down, it slows down quite a bit, and students are still able to understand something that was completely inaccessible to them. So I use that a whole lot in my courses. Okay, and then moving on to another use of Panopto is diversifying the format or content. Oh yeah, I'm not in the presentation mode anymore, thank you. And that was specifically a challenge with my online courses, because I wanted to avoid the having the students engage strictly with reading and then reacting to the reading or discussing the reading. And so I was able to include a lot of mini lectures or lectures that I recorded, kind of like Willie was saying, basically in my office, based on a PowerPoint presentation, and allowing the students to have different formats. So it was audio, video, rather than just reading. So I use that quite a bit. Another use of Panopto